So, about a month ago, I called my friend Meg Fossinger. She's one of the founders of the Colorado chapter of We Are Women. And I told her, did you see that the Buell Temple Theater is going to have Bill Cosby here in Denver? You know? And, he's embroiled in a rape controversy right now. And her group hasn't done much lately. And I thought, well, this would be one of those perfect opportunities for them to get in, do a protest, and then get out. Like, he's only going to be here once. Make a show. Strike while the iron's hot. And unlike so many other things that activist groups can do, this can be done and over with in a day. Get in, make your voice heard, and get out. Very easy to participate in, I thought at the time. But since then, having talked with a few other people, my girlfriend included, I have some reservations in protesting Bill Cosby. And part of it is, this is a man who has not been found guilty of these charges. He's just been charged so many times that he looks guilty. If you were to accept the argumentum ad populum, where, so many people say something or believe something, well, then it must be true. And I already had the reservation of believing these things about Bill Cosby because he's Bill Cosby. He's a very positive role model for impressionable youth, especially black youth in America. And to think this of him is just horrible. It'd be like Mr. Rogers fondling little kitties. You just don't want to think about that. Captain Kangaroo was never a kitty diddler either. We hope. And it seems like another in a long line of black celebrities that have had their legacies tainted. And, I had to wonder, is this maybe connected to a backlash from when he said certain controversial statements like, black men need to take responsibility for their children and, pull your pants up, look more dignified, black kids, is this some sort of backlash against that? Part of it might be. But I remember back when O.J. Simpson was found to be innocent in his criminal trial, and I thought he did it. Many, many people thought he did it. And there were some people who did not believe it. They still held out and believed in him. I remember Michael Jackson. I believed he did it. Even though it was mostly just based on the number of accusations he had against him, he was also weird, And so, without examining my reasons for believing it, I believed that Michael Jackson was a kitty diddler, And so now we come to this Bill Cosby thing where I'm about to go film all of these protesters today, and I'm a little reserved. I'm like, there's 30 now stories out there, plus, as I'm reading from CNN, 30 plus women, right? All having very similar stories. And when I read the stories and how similar they are, I remember how similar stories about alien abduction from the gray aliens are. You know, when one person reads another person's account and then just adopts parts of it, and then it looks more credible when they come out with their story. But do I believe that gray aliens are abducting people? I don't find that a credible scenario at all. Also, let's just throw it out there. The Salem witch trial, you know. all of the same Salem witch trials, and you know, I saw the play The Crucible. I know how this kind of thing can get out of hand, and more people can, you know, jump on the bandwagon because they want to support the original accuser. This is a tough one for me. But like most of the activism that I film, I will be just filming it and putting out there on my YouTube channel the activism without my commentary, just so that people can see it. I did the same thing for KFC being protested with pictures of, you know, featherless chicken that looked really grotesque. I do the same thing for some abortion protesters that I absolutely am not in agreement with. But this one, it's really standing out to me because very often I talk about logical fallacies on YouTube. And some of those logical fallacies have been coming out in the build-up to this protest that I'm about to film today. One of which comes from a CNN article, which I'll link in the description box. And the article is by Peggy Drexler. It's an opinion article on CNN. And she is speaking out against Felicia Rashad speaking out in favor of Bill Cosby. Felicia Rashad has defended him, and more than any other woman other than Camille Cosby, Cosby's wife, Felicia Rashad has been by Bill Cosby's side day in and day out for a giant period of his life. And more than all of the accusers had interactions with Bill Cosby, all put together, Felicia Rashad has known Bill Cosby. And so when she speaks out as a character witness about his character and says that he could never do something like that, it speaks a sort of logic of, you know, I've known him years, you've known him a day, so you say, so I win. But, you know, that's how all character witnesses would be. You know, the person who's known someone longer would have more credibility in speaking as to whether or not someone would be likely to do something like that. And Peggy Drexler says that Felicia Rashad is wrong for saying that the accusers are lying, and that you should just forget these women, and that they're just trying to destroy Cosby's legacy, which Felicia Rashad went ahead and said that she thinks it's orchestrated, which, you know, I have a hard time believing that it's orchestrated by one central person who, before all this happened, they, you know, planned it out. But I do see, you know, elements of each of their stories taking from other stories. So it's either this is a pattern of things that he does because he's a pattern serial rapist, or the women took from the other women's stories. And it does seem to fit the pattern of black celebrities that are very famous being brought down by controversies, you know? I was just talking about Kobe Bryant with my girlfriend, and she's like, didn't you know that he had something happen in Aspen? And so I had to look it up, you know, and I'm like, oh, look. You know, there was a controversy back, you know. I wonder when LeBron James is going to have his, you know. Will we ever be able to have a giant black celebrity that doesn't get brought down by some story like this coming out? Because the past stories kind of make all of them believable. I expect all evangelical preachers to be brought down by sex controversies, you know, sooner or later now, because so many of them have happened, you know. Anyways, back to the CNN article. Peggy Drexler says that Felicia Rashad is wrong for coming out at this time to say forget those women. And she says, this is the part that I have a real problem with. The simple fact is, you cannot be friends with a man whose accusers are in the double digits. Even if this man is still walking free, perhaps especially if this man is still walking free. Not if you want the rape of women to stop happening. Being someone who speaks on fallacious reasoning a lot, that paragraph in this opinion article is ripe with fallacious reasoning. First of all, if you don't agree with such and such, then you don't want the rape of women to stop happening. You know, it is possible for Felicia Rashad to want the rape of women to stop happening and still want to defend her friend who she thinks is falsely accused. I wager that this is the case. I don't know Felicia Rashad's stance on rape, but I imagine she thinks it's horrible. But to say that just because a person has accusers that are in the double digits, that they are guilty, is also very fallacious. It's that argumentum ad populum, which, if it were true, then, President Bush was in on the 9/11 attacks as an inside job, and President Obama is Kenyan because he has many accusers saying that he doesn't deserve to be president because he wasn't natural born. You know, just the number of people that believe something or come out and say something to accuse someone because they have their evidence does not mean that somebody is guilty. You know, I myself in my own profession have been accused of not caring about patients, of being rude to patients when I'm just doing my job. In fact, I'm probably the nicest of all the people in my section of the hospital. I've seen people say that they are going to sue people for things that just aren't true. And just tell them to their face, I'm going to sue you for, you know, brutality and whatnot. And just because a whole bunch of people have stories that say that, you know, I've been brutalized by this system, or I've been, you know, negatively affected by this, doesn't make it true, you know. And unfortunately, there are a lot of ways where the argumentum ad populum can be used to really affect legacies in a negative way. And I'm not just talking about celebrities who face charges because they have wallets, but also when you see civil suits filed for millions of people, class action suits. How many of those people actually felt negatively affected before they got a letter in the mail saying, hey, you could be owed some money? You know, there are lawyers that collect bad stories about good companies, and they just attack them because they have a wallet and a legacy to protect. So another thing that I've seen that has given me pause, I was invited to a Facebook group to organize the protest against Bill Cosby, and it's called Not in Our City, Bill Cosby. And so far, 65 have clicked going on that, but a lot more are going to it, especially because celebrity lawyer Gloria Allred is going to be doing a teach-in right before the protest. It's going to let out into the protest. It's going to be a pretty big thing. But we'll see when I film it. Some of the pictures of the signs that people have been making have been posted to the group already, and one of them says, I believe 30 women. Do you? Another one says rape is not funny, and I thought originally, about that as a sign idea for Meg if she was going to lead her group into doing this. But I didn't see Bill Cosby had made a joke about rape, but recently he actually has, in one of his shows, made a little reference to rape. So I guess the sign, it isn't actually a straw man anymore. One of the comments that really stood out to me in the group was by the person who's organizing it, Osmond Oswald, who I've been told is a very professional person who's very nice and will be very powerful in the feminist movement in Colorado because she's a young go-getter. She posted this, and it says, I just want to put this out there. There are many women who have been victims of sexual assault and rape, or who have been directly affected by it through their loved ones experiencing it among us. There will be women who are raw from living in this patriarchal society that breeds rape culture among us tomorrow. She posted this yesterday. The feelings we all have are real, and I want to make sure that we aren't policing each other's rage, words, or chosen participation. It's so important not to marshal each other or let others do it to our comrades. I'm excited for the collective energy everyone is going to bring. And the general feeling that I got from that comment is that of coalition building, But, again, as someone who speaks on logical fallacies and skepticism, I have a problem with it. Because if you see someone doing something wrong in your group, you should call it out. For instance, Meg and I were both at a protest for Occupy Colorado Springs, where some of the protesters were holding signs that had nothing to do with the Occupy movement, in a town surrounded by military or installations. They were holding signs saying soldiers are baby killers and soldiers have the blood of babies on their bayonets, just interspersed throughout the crowd of other signs saying Wall Street ripped us off, stuff about banks being too big to fail, all that other stuff. was getting poisoned by this other movement that was trying to co-opt all of these people into looking like they were in solidarity with what they were saying. And I would venture to say, just as an example, that if somebody were standing in this group of feminists who were protesting rape and they had a sign saying, Bill Cosby won and women 30 plus, and then has an asterisk, and then that asterisk says, plus there was probably a few dudes in there that he couldn't tell weren't women, so ew. They wouldn't want that sign in their protest because they're not transphobic, right? So they're not supposed to police people out of their group that are adding transphobia to it. That's what I get from this. What if somebody says something that isn't exactly the point? You know, what if somebody has a sign that makes everyone else look like they don't want to look? Shouldn't people say, hey, you know, you've gotten a little off topic? In this poster's opinion, I would say no, they shouldn't, according to her, because these women are hurting. And because they have been hurt by the patriarchal society that breeds rape culture, they have a free pass today to put whatever they want on their sign. Whatever they say is okay because they've been hurt by the patriarchal society that breeds rape culture. I think their signs should have to be about Bill Cosby and be something that is reflective of everyone's collective feelings on this that are in the protest group. And if somebody were to step out of that and say something that's totally out of line on their sign, even if they really believe it because they've been hurt by rape culture, they should still be policed. Links in the description box to where you can find the CNN article and this group, and hopefully video footage of some interesting protests to come.